Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, where the rabbis at Congregation Avos Torah each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. Rabbinic banter, I like to call it. I am Chaim Pupko, and I am joined by my dear friends and teammates, Rabbi Daniel Goldberg,
Shalom,
and Rabbi Morty Jesus.
Shalom.
If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming episode, please contact the shul. All right, here we go. Our one pasuk for this week, Parshas Vayechi, comes from chapter 48, Perek Memches, pasuk 16, Tez Zayin. It's a pasuk that is well known, often sung. Hamalach hagoel osi mikol ra yivarech es hanearim. The messenger, the malach, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless these young boys. Vikarei bahem shemi. V'shem avosai, Avraham v'Yitzchak. In them may my name be recalled or invoked, and the names of my fathers, Avraham and Yitzchak, v'yidgu larov b'kerav haaretz, and may they be teeming multitudes upon the earth. Yaakov, seeing that his days are numbered, summons Yosef and his sons, Menashe and Ephraim, in order to give them brachos, to bless them. This is a famous scene in the Torah in which Yaakov crosses his arms so that his right hand, his more prominent hand, is placed not on the head of the older Menashe, as one would expect, but rather on the head of Ephraim, the younger. And this pasuk of Hamalach HaGoel, which is not just a famous song with beautiful music composed by Aby Rottenberg for Dveikus, this pasuk is a bracha for sure, but one that is so poetically expressed, it's therefore subject to so many different questions and interpretations. And so let's see how the rabbis of Congregation Avos Torah approach this one pasuk.
I think this pasuk is just on a pshat level kind of astonishing, because if you think about Yaakov Avinu's life, so it was a life more so than the other avos, more so than most other characters in Tanakh. It was a life beset with challenge and struggle. And so for him to turn to his grandchildren and to say the angel that redeemed me from all bad should also accompany you, it's just quite a surprising way for Yaakov to look back and summarize his life. And it's made the more so if you jump back to Vayigash and recall, Paro asks Yaakov, how old are you? And Yaakov gives a different summary of his life. He says, I'm so-and-so years old, and he describes his life as me'at v'ra'im. His years have been few and bad. So just a few psukim ago, not long ago in the Torah, Yaakov looks back at his life and he sees it as being short and bad. And now it's Hamalach hagoel osi mikol ra. It's quite a reversal. And I think that the way to think about that is that indeed Yaakov's life was very, very challenging. And when he was going down to Egypt, he just got to Egypt, it looked like it was going to end on a sour note. And everything was it was just a slog. It was just challenging and painful and difficult. And of course, Yaakov has incredible emunah and faith, but it was very, very hard. And that was his summary of his life. But then, he sees kind of in his grandchildren, and Ephraim and Menashe, he sees a future. He sees how the seeds are being planted throughout his life for the Jewish people to fulfill this stage of their destiny, which was to go to a foreign land, but he sees how they can remain Jewish. He sees Ephraim and Menashe in front of him. He sees that there's really this master plan unfolding, and it changes his whole perspective on everything that happened beforehand. Suddenly all the travails and all the twists and turns, they came to something. They didn't end in just pain and suffering. It took us forward. It advanced the Jewish story, and it changed his whole perspective on life. And I actually think it's meduyak in the pasuk, because he doesn't say Hamalach shomer oti mikol ra. He doesn't say the angel that protected me from all bad, but goel, redeem. To redeem, you have to be in galus to be redeemed. You need to be in crisis, and then to be saved from crisis. So Yaakov recognizes there was a lot of crisis, but there was redemption. It was for something, and that angel should accompany you and should also be able to redeem you from your crises.
If we're honest with ourselves, we can all have that go LOT moment where we look back and say we had somebody who was by our side and pulling us out of the challenges. Every frustration, every challenge, every nisayon that we deal with is ultimately, in hindsight, when we have the ability, not always do we merit to see it in our lifetime, but with Hashem's master plan, there's always that time where we turn around and say, oh, okay, that made sense. I wasn't thrilled about that, but I see where it led me. And it gives us the opportunity to reflect and to appreciate even some of the challenges. Now, I wanted to speak about the word v'yidgu larov. In his introduction to the Berachot, Yaakov is telling them that you should proliferate like the fish. Rashi points out, Kedagim halalu sheparim verabim. Your offsprings should be like the fish that multiply ve'en ayin hara sholetet bahem. And they're free from any ayin hara. So it's not just a beracha that I want you to proliferate and multiply, but rather you should also be protected from the evil eye. Because naturally when someone has something in abundance, others are looking at it jealously, and it can cause ayin hara. And so part of Yaakov's beracha was that this beracha should be successful. You should become many, but simultaneously it should not come to haunt you. Those numbers that you built should not come to be a problem. Now, the Midrash wonders why dagim are somehow spared from ayin hara. Simple interpretation is they're beneath the surface. We can't see them. And so they're multiplying in unbelievable numbers, but we don't see them. But I saw another comment brought down on the commentaries of the Midrash that says that dagim are also unique in the sense that they travel in schools of fish. And when someone is part of a larger body, people don't necessarily overanalyze that. When you take yourself, oh, I'm different than the community, I'm bigger, I'm better, I'm more powerful, I'm smarter, I'm more successful, then that's where ayin hara has its evil tendencies. But if somebody's part and parcel of the community, and yes, they're successful and they have beautiful things, but people feel that that person's one of us, ayin hara is not sholet because they're part of the school. They're not different. Where ayin hara becomes dangerous is when someone wants to be unique and different and stick their success in others' faces. But here, Yaakov Avinu's beracha to Menashe and Ephraim were, you should multiply, but recognize that the greatest protection you can have is if you multiply like the fish. If you stay a close-knit family, a unit in which all of you are part of the same group, you have nothing to fear. V'yidgu larov bekerev haaretz.
Chazal say on this pasuk, the ayin hara has no effect, right? Eina sholetet, the things that are hidden. When you hide your wealth, right? When you hide what you have, when you keep things under the surface and quiet, so then the ayin hara doesn't affect it. And that's how we learn it from the fish, because the fish are under the surface, they're under the ocean. But I think based on what you're saying, you could say even more. It's not just you have to literally hide what you have, but it's when you recede into the klal, and you don't call attention to yourself, right? It's not that you're hidden, but you're not standing out. That's also what I think it means to be hidden.
Rabbi Goldberg, I think you once spoke about this on one of your high holiday dirashot. I remember discussing with you. The Isha Shunamit, she said, "Betoch ami anochi yoshavet." She recognized there was an opportunity to get a beracha, but obviously that beracha would have singled her out, and you would have made her special and be put on a pedestal. She said, "Listen, I prefer to forego the beracha to be part of that nation. I don't want to be singled out as somebody who's different. I want to be betoch ami anochi yoshavet."
That's right. Very good.
Nice.
It's fascinating in this pasuk. It's never really come to my attention that it's v'yidgu larov bekerev haaretz, like a fish on land. It's almost like I want you to be successful, but recognize you're like a fish on land. You're not where you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Be successful and thrive, but don't become of this place in a certain sense.
There's got to be a term for that, like a poetic contrast of some sort.
Zugma.
Rabbi Goldberg's word of the day.
Rabbi Goldberg's word of the week.
Any of you listeners out there, if you can challenge me on my application of Zugma here, I'm open to it. This one may be incorrect, but it may be a Zugma, and my ninth grade English lit teacher should be very proud of me.
Never heard that word. Wow.
I think the classic example is from Poor Richard's Almanac. That's Ben Franklin. Fish and visitors smell in 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
So the stark contrast between those two things. Anyway,
Google tells me that zeugma is a literary device, a figure of speech that uses a single word or phrase to modify two different parts of a sentence in different ways.
Ooh, not a zeugma.
I think it might be in the Parsha.
How do you spell it?
How do you spell it?
I'm a terrible speller.
I could tell you how it's spelled.
You could.
Because I'm looking at it.
It's Zeu. There we go.
I wasn't even sure it was an English word. I thought it was like Aramaic.
No.
I thought it was like guzma.
Wait, Zugma v'zuschara.
Yeah, zugma. I think like guzma, zug, like a zug, like a pear or a bell or. All right. There's so many interesting things in this pasuk, including how Yaakov invokes the names of his father and his grandfather. Some rabbis are caught by the fact that Yaakov invokes himself first before Yitzchak and Avraham when he says, Vikarei Bahem Shemi. But I saw a fascinating idea and observation of what exactly he means by Vikarei Bahem, right? That our names should be called upon them or recalled by them or invoked upon them. In this whole context of having Menashe and Ephraim in front of him and switching his arms, that what Yaakov was doing quite intentionally was attempting to do something that his father and his grandfather had tried to do but had not succeeded in. And that is to have both a pair of sons carry on a legacy. Avraham at one point thought that Yishmael too would be part of the bris together with Yitzchak. And I've always felt that what Yitzchak was doing with the brachos and Yaakov and Esav was hoping that Yaakov and Esav would both be part of the bris, and that Yaakov would be the spiritual figure and Esav would be the political leadership, and that they would join together in the Jewish nation in the bris. But of course it was not to be. And Yaakov sees that he now has an opportunity with this next generation to have Ephraim and Menashe play those roles and succeed. And so he sees in Ephraim great spiritual potential, and he sees within Menashe great political leadership and charisma, and that the bracha to them is that they should be able to work together. But this vision of the two of them working together, I think is so fascinating. But I think there's another lesson here. I think there's an even deeper lesson. And that is that as Yaakov is envisioning the future of the Jewish people, he recognizes that the very survival of his progeny is based on each one realizing their own destiny. That each one of them has to find that unique path for themselves, and that the Jewish people will be comprised of these different people with these different skills and these different talents. And Ephraim has his destiny and Menashe has his destiny. And it's not that Yaakov demotes Menashe, but rather Yaakov puts his hand on Menashe too, because he is a Shevet and he's going to play a critical role along with Ephraim. Everything's going to be guided by the Torah, but everyone's got to find their destiny. And I think it's timely for today when we see how so many tribes have come together in the state of Israel that have been separated for so many years. Jews of so many different identities and cultures trying to create a nation together, and all the conflicts that arise. I just want to grab all of them and say, you all have a role. You all contribute something. Each one of you. I mean, whether you're serving the army, whether you're learning Torah, whether you're working, whatever you're doing, everyone serves a role. Everyone serves a purpose in Klal Yisrael. In the nitty gritty and the details, it's really hard to sort out who does what. But I think we have to appreciate all the different roles. It's all right.
I think that's when we're strongest, honestly. When we appreciate each other and recognize that every corporation, every organization, every army has people playing different roles. And when we can step back and say that we need everybody. You can't have a functioning Fortune 500 company without someone who's willing to do the janitorial work. You can't have somebody in the mailroom. And then you go all the way up the totem pole. Every person plays that critical role. And the recognition for us as Jews is to understand we are all one team. To appreciate every person's role is really what makes us an unbreakable nation. When we don't necessarily see ourselves as different, but connect and understand I play a unique role, a distinct role, and that's something that we have to pride ourselves on.
Like, who chooses to play the bass guitar, Or, like one of these like lesser known, like in an orchestra, who wants to be
the triangle,
and
seriously, by the way, in an orchestra, does somebody spend years and years practicing the triangle?
Well, they
ding.
Right. Well, they start with a square. Yeah. No, but it's fascinating. I think the orchestra example or the band example is a very good one, because you see how every single person has devoted their entire life to a certain instrument. And some of them are more glamorous inherently than others, but everyone is equally necessary and critical to the whole. So it's a pretty apt mashal.
Yeah. To be honest, in a shul like ours, with so many families from so many different diverse backgrounds, where we have different minyanim, where we have like sub-communities, there are times when conflicts arise, decisions have to be made, and there are certain segments of the community that don't understand others. What I really try to communicate to people is that you have to understand that we're a family, not just a community. And in a family, everyone makes their contribution. They make contributions in different ways. And we have to learn to appreciate contributions that maybe don't resonate with us, but really bring something to our community.
That's beautiful.